And joining me now, our NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel from northern Syria, and from Stanford University, Brett McGurk. He's the former special presidential envoy for the global coalition to defeat ISIS for both Presidents Obama and Trump. Brett McGurk, welcome back to Meet the Press. Richard, let me start with you in northern Syria. Yesterday, President Erdogan said in his speech about the pause, ceasefire, whatever we want to call this right now. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, the minute 120 hours expire, we will continue from where we left and keep crushing the heads of the terrorists. I know you've been in touch with the SDF commander on the ground there. In 48 hours is when this expires. What's going to happen?
Well, the commander told me he fully expects that the violence is going to resume because the Kurdish forces here, led by the commander I spoke to, and the Turkish government, which brokered a deal with the United States, don't agree on the terms. They're talking about two different things. Turkey says unless the Kurds pull out of a very large area, they're going to restart the violence. But the Kurdish commander says it's a much smaller area that he's talking about. So they are set up to resume a collision course. And while this is happening, there is ethnic cleansing underway. That is a very, very big word, but it is the only word we are hearing right now. Already 250,000 people have been forced to leave their homes, and the Kurdish commander thinks once the Turks restart this offensive, the rest of them are going to be forced out.
Brett McGurk, you just heard that report from Richard. I know you've been to Syria. You've been to where Richard's at right now. Ethnic cleansing is a strong phrase. Is there any other way to describe it, though?
Well, first, where Richard's standing is that is the heart of what used to be the ISIS caliphate. So I think it's important to remember, why is this area important? Why are we there? This was the headquarters of ISIS, the main supply routes for ISIS, which came through Turkey, when they were enslaving thousands of women, holding slave markets to trade them around with different fighters, planning and plotting attacks against us here in the United States and against our friends in Europe. That's why this is so important. Erdogan, by his own terms, I think we have to listen to what he's saying. He is saying that he is planning a safe zone and that he has an agreement with President Trump, which runs 450 kilometers by 30 kilometers, which is the entire, from the Euphrates River all the way to Iraq, and that he will then repopulate that zone with 2 million people. And he claims that that has been agreed to with the United States. U.S. officials describe it as a much far more narrow area. And I think Kurdish fighters will probably begin to pull out of that much more narrow area, but then to be replaced by these Turkish-backed extremist groups who are responsible for war crimes and all sorts of other atrocities. Another reason why this is a real strategic debacle is that in 48 hours the ceasefire ends, but also in 48 hours President Erdogan will be meeting with President Putin in Sochi. And that is where the fate of the Kurds, particularly in these areas like Kobani and others, which are majority Kurd. There are other areas in this strip that are majority Christian. And the fate of those areas, unfortunately, as we are evacuating our bases and ceding all of our influence, will be decided by President Putin of Russia.
Richard Engel, the defense secretary announced earlier today on his way to, I believe he's headed to, we just found out he's in Afghanistan. He announced that these troops are not coming home. They're going to be moved from Syria to Iraq, which actually already has some Republicans who actually supported the withdrawal going, well, what's the point of this now? If you're not even bringing them home, you're sending them to Iraq. What are they going to be doing in Iraq?
Well, apparently they're going to continue to fight against ISIS. But effectively what they will be doing is leaving their old friends, their old allies, the Kurds, 2 million people who fought alongside of them, who supported them, who did not attack them here in northern Syria. They will be leaving them to a broadened campaign of ethnic cleansing. Now, Brett was just talking about these extremist groups. They are fundamental to this entire equation because there are about 10,000 of them, according to Kurdish and U.S. officials, who are now operating in conjunction with the Turkish government. So it's not just that the Turkish military, a NATO country, is assaulting, has paused now, will soon assault again in 48 hours. It seems very likely this area. They are using about 10,000 extremist fighters going house to house, killing people, terrifying people, putting out videos threatening to behead people. And that is why so many people are already running for their lives, heading toward regime areas, heading toward the Iraqi border, heading anywhere they can because they are afraid they're going to be slaughtered.
Brett McGurk, what is Syria now? Is it a full-fledged country? Is it being carved up? Is Turkey annexing a piece of it? I mean, what is the future of Syria here?
Well, it's always been one of the most complex situations, and the situation President Trump inherited actually was on the road to some stability. And we executed a plan, and I served 2 years in his administration, in which we defeated the physical ISIS caliphate and stabilized a third of Syria. The rest of Syria, most of it is under the control of the Assad regime. And then in northwest Syria, another very serious problem, that's where the opposition is, but also it's the dominant home for al-Qaeda in Syria, the largest al-Qaeda safe haven really in the world. So it's kind of in these three zones. The zone in the northeast was pretty stable, and we had it about 2,000 American troops. It was peaceful. I used to go in there every couple months. When this really started to get much harder is when President Trump in December announced that he wanted to leave entirely. He then somewhat reversed that, but cut the force arbitrarily by 50%. And that sent the message to all the other players in the region here, to Putin, to Erdogan, to Khamenei, to Assad, that the Americans want to leave. It also significantly decreased our leverage and influence to manage the situation. So it happened on October 6th in this phone call. The president just threw all of our leverage out the window. So I am afraid that now the future of Syria will be determined by actors who are quite hostile to our interests, and that includes Iran, Assad, and Erdogan. And putting 1,000 troops in western Iraq is good because we want to help the Iraqis, but it's not going to make a significant difference.
All right.
One final point.
Yes, sir.
Leaving Syria cedes so much influence to our adversaries. It has ceded initiative to Iran. That is one reason we're seeing so much increased tension in the region, and that President Trump has sent 14,000 American troops to the region since May. So he can't tell his political rallies that he's getting troops out of endless wars when he's sending 14 times the amount back into the region.
An excellent point to end on there. Brett McGurk, the former special envoy that was essentially in charge of the ISIS policy for Presidents Obama and Trump. Richard Engel in northern Syria for us. Richard, as always, stay safe out there. When we come back, impeachment. Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here, and then click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.